Hello, it's Nancy with A Scroll in the Garden, and we're back from our little 3-day away from the garden venture, and it's still looking good. I was so worried about it while I was gone. I thought it might need me, but it seems to have been doing pretty well. It does need watering, but I'll be out here doing that pretty quickly, but so much of it still just looks pretty. Look, even the calabachoa still looks pretty, so I'm happy about that. These little, I have some tiny little seedlings here that are trying to come up. Some of them are empty and didn't do anything, but I always think if I get just a few from seed, I'm ahead, because the seeds don't cost nearly as much as to buy a plant, and sometimes they actually do better if they start growing right where they're going to, in the same place. Not necessarily that you don't transplant them, but that it's the same type of elements in the wind and heat. And speaking of heat, we do have some. It felt very warm to me this morning. I'll have to look at the gauge and see really how warm it was, but I'm just so pleased that they still look so good. Just a little bit excited about it, and just look at this. I told you that I was afraid it wasn't coming. It took so long to come back, but I thought it was coming back, and it definitely is. This sedum is still smaller than it was before that last frost, or the last two frosts that we had. It was already up and just beginning to billow out of there, but it lost that particular. Look at this lobelia, isn't that gorgeous? And right behind it is a calabachoa that was so pretty, that white and yellow, and it went so well with this that I noticed there were snails in there. I put some eliminator in there, and hopefully it got them, or at least knocked them down some. But I don't think that the Bible says that we're snared by the words of our mouth, so I better not actually say that I don't think it will live. But I do think it's going to have a hard time of it if it does. I'll have to say that for it. I may have to see if I can get another one. And I also noticed that this little, I thought I was going to be so pleased with this strawberry pot with the alyssum in it, the little bit of yellow Marguerite daisy and the pretty alyssum purple, but at least some of it has got to be replaced. That little one there, it's got to be replaced. These others don't look too bad, but they're not billowing out pretty like I thought they would. But they still may. I haven't totally given up on those yet, but I do need to see if I can find a little bit of alyssum in purple to replace that if I possibly can. This is my little pot. This is what I was telling you about the gazanias, about something. Been looking for something that you can plant in the bottom part of your wire plants with the cocoa liner, and I found these. These are the most perfect I found so far, because their stems aren't terribly long, and they just look like they're just growing, and they are just growing right there on that coconut liner. I still want to put something right there in the center of her to maybe billow out around her some. This is my Persian shield. I told you before, but I don't have good luck with Persian shield. My friend Glenda, hers always looks better than mine. And it's such a beautiful plant. I don't really know why I have trouble with it. Maybe this will be my year for it to do well. Pretty little calabachoa with the white snowball bush behind it. Oh, look at this. Wood shavings. I guess our little woodpecker is gonna put me some mulch in my little, let me see if I can find him for you. I hear him up there. I showed you, if you've seen if you've seen any of our posts, you've seen him on there before. I'm gonna have to come over to the side a little bit, which may just scare him away, but maybe not. Can you see him up there? He's trying to get away from me. The last time I took his picture, he tried to hide in his little nest hole that he's building there, but it just wasn't quite deep enough for him to hide in. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's not deep enough for him to hide in now, because he's been busy. He's got little wood shavings all over the place, which is fine. They'll probably will make a great mulch for me. This little calabachoa is not looking so good today, but I think it probably just needs a drink. Oh my, yes, I can tell by this pinta that this little thing needs a drink. I may not wait to give it a drink till I get around here. I may just take the watering can that I have right over here and give that little one a drink right now. This is what I thought they would all look like, and worse by the time I got back, but luckily they don't. I thought too that maybe leaving in May, in the very first part of May, it would be okay to leave it. I don't usually leave the garden once it comes on. I don't leave it for more than a day, but I did this time for something very important. My baby girls, which is grown up, of course, and so is her friend that lived next door, who became like her little sister. And that little sister got married this last weekend. So we were there with them, and it was a wonderful, beautiful wedding. So happy for them, and hope they have a wonderful, wonderful life together. I think one of the most important things about love is simply respect. I know that love is the greatest, because the Bible tells us that love is the greatest of these. Faith, hope, and charity, but charity or love is the greatest, and I totally believe that, but I also really don't believe you can love somebody if you don't respect them. So I think respect is a great part of love. So these are looking good for me. They do need a drink, but I think they may have actually enjoyed not having a drink there for a while. Sometimes I might water them a little bit too much, because in our weather they usually do need watering every day a little bit, and I can't give them a whole lot because I don't have time in a day to get over it, leaving it in one spot very long. Look at these pretty, the irises bloomed like crazy while I was gone. So that's wonderful. And the peonies, I'll be going back there in a little bit, and I'll show you what happened back there with the peonies. They look really great too. So we're still in the front, but I couldn't resist going back and showing you this. This is just catmint, but it is such a pretty little plant. It has that beautiful soft sky blue, and it stays in bloom almost all season long. A lot of perennials don't, so it's nice when you can find one that stays in bloom for a good length of time. Here our bird again, so I thought I'd come over here and see if I could get him one more time for you. He is climbing up that tree trying to get out of my way. And I can't tell with the sun glaring on the lens if I'm getting him or not, but he's up there and he's been busy in his little nest. So now we're in the back, and I've got the water going back here. So I'll have to go turn that off before we can go on around, and everything will be wet where it was, but it needs to get wet, so that's okay. This is another one of our crepe myrtles here in the background that's got the pretty new leaves growing on it. And I wanted to show, oh, look at this pretty double petunia. I just love the double petunias. Just like a petunia, only doubly more pretty. Isn't that gorgeous? And the vinca or periwinkle. Look at this beautiful calabachoa here, all lit up in blue. And then here's what I wanted to show you is happening with the peonies blooming. Isn't that pretty? I also noticed this blue salvia back here shining this morning. Isn't that pretty? Just looking so good. There's some more of that pretty blue catmint, some more back there. It can be invasive. I've heard that it can look, even our roses are blooming. Isn't that pretty? I've heard they can be invasive. To me, they have not gotten to be invasive at all. And so I've just really enjoyed them. This is that pink peony that I was telling you about that my friends all wanted a start off of it because it's just so eye-catching, so pretty. More irises in bloom. There's a columbine blooming. Isn't that pretty? That pretty little yellow columbine. And then behind it there's another peony. See, this is what I was afraid I was going to miss while I was gone. And I did miss them opening up, but it's kind of a pleasure, an extra bit of pleasure to come home and find so much just looking so good. Oh, there's my little Swiss chard is not looking so good. It's laying out needing a drink, but it'll get a drink here in a bit, and hopefully it'll pick right back up and go again. The clematis that's climbing up my Rose of Sharon bush is looking good too. There's another clematis bloom right down here. I have shown you this one before. It's just so pretty. It's worth looking at over and over again. And then behind it there, can you see that pretty peach colored roses are blooming? Got one peony right here trying to open up. Let me get around here where I can. Oh, I'll show you this one more time, because hopefully after today, or at least early this week, I'm going to get that solidago out of there and have this one planted too. Maybe not this week, but soon, real soon. Hopefully this week. But we do have a lot of other stuff going, so I may not be able to get that going. But getting up here to where I can turn my water off and then turn it back on and water everything. But I just had to go off a little bit this morning, so I wanted to, or go away from the garden for a bit, and I wanted to leave it with some water coming in on it. And look at this little pot. I was going to put a rose moss in there, but that's something else that tell you is that sometimes we try to replace stuff too soon, because all that is seed from last year's rose moss. And sometimes though, if you do wait, it maybe won't, it doesn't have its seed like that always, but most always it does. Look at this one. Here's another one just coming up from seed, except of course for the hen and chickens. It's just perennial and it comes back. There was one little peony over here that look at this little daisy had wilted down, but it's already perking back up with the rain or the water from the sprinkler this morning. Look at this beautiful clematis here, the double clematis. Isn't that pretty? This little Gara was certainly needing a drink. There's another peony. This is the peony, though, that I really wanted to see open. And actually, I don't know if it's going to open now. As you can tell, it's kind of, I don't know what happened to it. Actually, I think what happened to it was hot, and then I watered, and the sprinkling just kind of stunted it. So it may not open pretty for you, but when it does, it's just a wonder to behold. It's so pretty. And then this little pot here I did recently, and I wanted that brown pot because this grass is usually brown. It kind of just stays brown, or else I got the wrong grass in there, but I thought the two browns would be pretty, and then the verbena around it is just a pretty blue. It's almost the color of this widow's tears, double widow's tears. Isn't that pretty? And then there's a single widow's tears bloom right there. Oh, here's a pretty little Dutch iris. They have pretty colors. The Dutch iris are usually really bright and pretty, so eye-catchingly pretty. Looks like our little Virginia bluebells are gone for the season. The only thing with the perennials are that not many of them last long. That's why I think you should, look at this. There's one where I replaced the Mose Ross, but doesn't it look good? I think she's just loving that spot. But that's what I was gonna say, that you really want both perennials and annuals in your yard, because the perennials will be little surprises that will come up for you and you'll just love, like this columbine here. But it won't last really long, although columbine does last longer than a lot of it does. A lot of the perennials, some of them do have a fairly long-lasting bloom, but a lot of them don't last very long. So that's why you want the annuals, because usually their bloom will last all season. Isn't that pretty back there? This is a ghost honeysuckle, and then that's that little pot that I was showing you the other day that I filled out with pink and powder blue, and just I'm almost afraid to come back here because I think all these little pots, how did they go 3 days without watering? Although I did water early that morning before we left, and so they've actually done fairly well, which is making me really happy to know that they did all right. So anyway, I've got to get busy, so I guess I'll leave you at that. Look at this Calabachoa over here. I'm beginning to think maybe I water them too much because they actually look good being left, but I'm always afraid they'll just totally dry out, and once they dry out, they don't really seem to come back out of it. Those and the beautiful Bacopas are pretty much like that. You just don't ever want them to dry totally out. Here's one of those pretty Bacopas. They make such a beautiful trailing plant, as do the Calabachoa. They are a beautiful trailing plant too, both of them. I couldn't pick my favorite between the two because they're just both so pretty. Some more of the Calabachoa trailing out. See, my little girl got turned over. Turn her back up. Have rain trees coming up everywhere. I'll pull these up all summer long, most likely. But the rain tree, though it can be a pain, it's also a very pretty tree, especially in the fall. Oh, I see I have another clematis here blooming. Isn't that pretty? Well, I've got to go. I could just keep on looking. That's my favorite part of gardening, is looking at the flowers and getting pictures of them. Take pictures of your garden, because for me, it helps me to figure out, well, this is what I want to do again next year, or I might figure out, really, I didn't particularly care for that one, and I think I can do better in that pot or that place. Here's another one of those beautiful double petunias. They're so pretty, and I've learned I always just pull this out. Don't do that. I've learned, break the whole thing off, because if you don't, of course I wanted to save seed and let it go to seed and see if it'd come back from seed, but if you want to do that late in the season and keep them clipped back if you want more bloom, because once they set seed, they think they're done for the season, so they don't continue to bloom. So I've actually learned this from watching YouTube also, but if you clip it all the way back to where you get that little place where it's making that seed, it'll go ahead and bloom again. That's what keeps them in full bloom, and I did not know that. So that's part of my reason my petunias haven't been as pretty as I would like them to be. So hopefully this year they will be pretty and last longer. Look at these pretty little Calabrachoa here, and then there's some more back there. And if you will look, even the fuchsia plant is bloomed out pretty. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and leave, I think. I just keep finding things. It's just wonderful, actually, to come back after 3 days and find so much in bloom. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take you one more time around the back, because that's another place where things are blooming. I did have some clematis, and this is another pot I've got to redo soon. But I did have some clematis already blooming. Look at this. But there's some blooming that wasn't blooming too, like that particular one right there. And then here's a pretty iris. It did have a butterfly. I was trying to sneak up on it and get it, but I didn't. Some of the evening primrose is blooming. The pretty pink that you see there is the evening primrose. Our little roses that we transplanted are needing a drink severely. I'll clip the dead parts off, and I'll give those a really good drink today. That's my plan. There's that little butterfly again. See if I can get him for you this time. Yep, there he is, flittering around. But these are some of the clematis I wanted to show you. And down this row is peonies that are beginning to bud out and open up. And the larkspur, surprisingly, I didn't know it was ready to bloom, but it's blooming also, some of it looking good. It's actually, I found this out by pure accident, but it's the most wonderful plant. Seems like it may become invasive later, but for me, the last few years, I have actually let it grow up with my irises. It looks good with them, and with those seeds there, they kind of choke out weed seeds, and if you pulled up weeds from your irises, you know what a terrible job that is. But planting the larkspur just kind of took the place of the weeds, and they didn't let the weeds grow nearly as much, and they look good with them.